Hi everybody, it's been another week, so here's another little update. Caesar and I are still in the same apartment, still doing okay, we're still healthy, we're still safe, we're still in Panama. Quarantine in Panama, I think it's been going for, is it 5? Well, we've done 7 weeks now. We started just a bit early, self-isolating ourselves as soon as it became apparent that this virus was a problem. We've been in lockdown now, I think the country pretty much for 6 weeks in quarantine. We've been in 7 weeks stuck inside an apartment. We're heading into week 8 and we still have no end in sight. I think it was last week on the 6 o'clock news when they have the press conference with the Minister of Health and some other ministers and they provide us some information. They do a question and answer session at the end and someone asked a really good question, what data is it the government's looking for? And the answer was the R factor or the replication factor. They want it to be less than 1, which is fair enough. The problem is they're not giving us that data every day and we can't find it on a publicly available website. So we're still kind of guessing as to where the data is. If anyone has a link to finding the R factor data for Panama, could you put it in the comments below? I'd be really curious to be tracking that piece of data every day so I can have some hope, some plan for the future. The hope is important. So I wanted to talk today about looking forward and what might happen if and when this lockdown ends, because it's going to have to end at some stage. They can't keep a population of a whole country in full quarantine absolutely indefinitely, no matter how much governments may like to do that. It's completely impossible because eventually, if you keep doing it for too long, people will starve and you will probably have a violent revolution on your hands. So it has to end at some stage. So when they end it, at some stage, we don't know when that might be, what might happen when it ends? Well, first of all, it has to end at some stage. If they do end it, there are essentially 3 possible pathways, I figure. The first one would be ideal. They have spent time, while they've had people in quarantine, they've spent time to ramp up testing and to ramp up the country's ability to do contact tracing and to have an ability to isolate any positive cases of the virus. And then, so once they release quarantine, the number of cases may very well rise. And what they need to do is they need to have lots of community testing, not just symptomatic people, asymptomatic people. They need to do lots of contact tracing and immediately find and isolate any further cases. So in order to do that, you have to have a really low incidence of the virus at the beginning of the opening. And then you have to control and maintain low numbers of cases after you've opened. That's the ideal situation, and I think watching what's happened in New Zealand, they've pretty much followed as close as they can that ideal pathway. It's worked really well for them. The other option is if you don't have plenty of testing, like heaps of testing, and a really high capacity for contact tracing, then you have to have a really good capacity in your hospitals to deal with an increase of cases, some of them possibly fatal because people will die. So you have to have more hospital beds and you have to have enough ICU beds to deal with that. I know that Panama has built at least 1 new hospital during the last few weeks. I know that they're separating COVID cases from others in different hospitals, which is a really, really good idea. You want to isolate those cases and have them treated by separate staff in separate areas. That's really, really good practice. I don't know, though, if they've increased the number of hospital beds and ICU beds to cope with a full-blown outbreak in the country, which leads me to the last possible pathway that would be available to, and this is not just Panama, this is also New Zealand or the United States, anywhere else. The third would be if you haven't got the testing and the contact tracing and you don't have the capacity in your hospitals to deal with a full-blown epidemic, then you're basically going to have a period of lockdown, you're going to release it, cases will rise and you're going to have to go back into lockdown, and you're going to have a wave after wave of long periods of locking your population down, short periods of people being allowed to try and have some kind of normal economic activity, long periods of lockdown, and you're going to have that wave after wave until we get a vaccine. And that's probably not going to be until sometime early next year, and that's being extremely hopeful. I mean, that's assuming that we can get a vaccine. Not every virus is one that we've been able to develop a vaccine for. We still don't have a vaccine for AIDS. We have some pretty good treatments. It's a different virus, but it's a virus. We still don't have a vaccine for it after decades, and they've been trying. So that's rather depressing, all of those possible outcomes of what might happen if and when this government and other governments release people from lockdown restrictions. I guess our plan is to just stay safe, stay in this apartment as much as we can, and stay healthy. That's my plan, pretty much. Don't get sick. I hope all my friends and family are still safe and well. And thank you very much to the people who like to watch these videos. And if you enjoyed watching this, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to my channel. Thanks, and I'll see you next week for another little chat. Bye guys.